Eddie Lubier is the CEO of Provost. He is an award-winning technology executive with over 25 years of experience managing complex multi-million-dollar enterprise projects. As CEO of Provost, he has transformed the company into a national leader in public health informatics, cloud computing, and cybersecurity. Under his leadership, Provost has played a pivotal role during the COVID-19 pandemic, securely managing billions of test results for the CDC and health departments across the globe. Beyond the boardroom, he is adjunct professor and a dedicated advocate for the decision intelligence framework, focusing on how data-driven insights can solve critical challenges in healthcare and education. And I would like to personally thank him for the contribution of Provost to help sponsor this workshop.
Thanks, Gordon. And thanks, Jennifer. And I know Nathan's up there. I still remember when I first met Gordon and all your ideas, and it was fascinating. I still remember when you reached out and you guys were planning this. I think this might be year 3.
3 in this place, but probably year 5 or 6.
Yeah, and which is remarkable. And it just shows you that what Gordon and the team and FSU are doing when it comes to this space, they're ahead of the game. Yeah, it's been very proactive. Obviously, so I'm very grateful to be here. I just want to say a few words. So as mentioned, our company, Ruvos, is in healthcare technology. We've been around for 22 years, founded here in Tallahassee. We have about 100 employees across 21 states. Around 35 of the employees are here in Tallahassee, and a good 25 went to FSU, including one of my business partners, Jeff Couch, went to FSU. So we're very proud of Tallahassee. We've always been bullish on Tallahassee. I see Alan up there. Alan, thanks for hosting here as well. But a little story. So as Gordon mentioned, during COVID, we were responsible for moving about 2.5 billion COVID test results from across the U.S. to the White House and to the CDC. And so we saw a boom there, and from a hiring perspective, and it was an extraordinary experience, even though very difficult for us and people around the world. But one of the things that we realized after COVID was, we're okay being the FedEx of healthcare or the piping, quote unquote, around that data. But then we started asking ourselves, what can we do with the data, right? Instead of just dropping off or delivering the data to the front door of the White House or the CDC or a Surgeon General or an epidemiologist, what if we help them with that data? And so we started investing in data science, learned a lot from conversations with Gordon, Nathan, and others, and also in AI. And we've sort of transformed our company. And the timing was great because the reality is, like many organizations in public health, the grants are drying up, right? So it kind of forced us to, even though we're at 22 years, it forced us to be very entrepreneurial, kind of get off our butts and try to figure things out. And so over the last 1.5 to 2 years, we started rapid prototyping. We would meet with a Ministry of Health from Saudi Arabia, for example. And the Minister of Health said, we have deserts, quote unquote, where there isn't healthcare. We need to figure out, this is a use case, we need to figure out where we're going to place our next hospital, right? Do we have to lift and shift one or build one from scratch? And that's legitimate. That's exactly what the Minister of Health said. And so we built a prototype focused on hospital capacity, hospital catchment. We were able to build that in about 1.5 weeks and then able to present something. Another example, we're rolling out an app, a healthcare app that allows university students to order a test, an STD test electronically and get those results electronically. We think there's a need there because of disease reporting funding diminishing. So we were meeting with some investors pitching this idea, and we had a few slides. And one of the investors said, Eddie, your slides are great, but I want to see something in action. I want to see something that I can touch and feel work and demo. He said, there's no excuse for you not to have something. He was very nice. There's no excuse for you to have something that I can demo, especially with all the different tools that are out there, especially in the AI space. So we've learned a lot. We're very grateful. The other thing I wanted to mention with my Chamber of Commerce hat, as a chair this year, one of our focuses from a private sector, not only collaborating with FSU, is focusing on innovation and technology. People often ask, what's the vision for Tallahassee, right? We understand we're the Mag Lab capital of the world, but if I go into 10 homes today and I ask them about the Mag Lab, some of them may have a response. However, if I talk to them about healthcare, I think every single one of them will have an opinion about healthcare. So I think we're entering a time of amazing opportunity, especially between FSU and Tallahassee Memorial Healthcare and our communities around us. There's going to be a tremendous amount of potential, not only for our community, but honestly for the region, into Georgia, into Alabama, right? So when people often ask, what does that mission or vision for our community look like? I think there are two words. I think it's healthcare and innovation. And a big part of that innovation is what we're doing here today. So thank you all for being here, Gordon, Jennifer, and team. Thank you for allowing us to support in some way. And these are the types of meetings that we will remember 5 and 10 years from now when our community has transformed, especially in the technology space. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have 3 distinguished panelists who are going to answer a series of questions generated by one of my favorite AIs, Gemini in this particular case. Okay, and I should say, I specified the parameters of the conference, and I asked for like diverse questions, interesting questions, and I got the answers, and I did not understand the answers. I mean, I was reading, and I honestly did not understand. And I said, restate the same answers in words I understand, you know. And so I sent you guys the letters, both the complex version and the simplified version. So hopefully one of the versions was adequate. Okay, so that made me think, you know, as we go into AGI and ASI, you're going to have these AIs and agents communicating with each other, and you will have you won't have any idea of what they're saying, and you will have to trust what they tell you, and that becomes a serious issue. Okay, anyway, so let me introduce a quick introduction to the 3 panelists. 2 of them you know already. So I'll start with Rick Burnette here on my left. Okay, so Rick, again, generated by Gemini. Rick Burnette is but I've known Rick for several years now, right? Pre-COVID. Rick Burnette, he's a key architect behind Florida State University's strategic growth and national ranking rise. As the Chief Strategic Officer and Institutional Data Administrator, he leads FSU's Decision Intelligence Framework, leveraging advanced analytics and data science to drive institutional innovation. With over 30 years of leadership at FSU, he is a recognized expert in building data-empowered academic environments. Okay, so we have 1 data expert, we have 1 finance expert, and 1 material expert. So that pretty much covers the gamut. So let me continue with Alejandro. Lopez-Lira is a researcher at the UF Warrington College of Business, specializing in the intersection of fintech, machine learning, and asset pricing, as you heard earlier. A pioneer in applying large language models to financial markets, his work has been featured in leading academic journals and is further detailed in his book, The Prediction Edge: Outsmart the Market Using Generative AI and ChatGPT in Financial Forecasting. Finally, Markus Buehler is a pioneer in AI-driven knowledge discovery and a member of the U.S. National Academy of Engineering. His work focuses on graph-aware multi-agent AI platforms that translate complex data into breakthroughs in material science and biology. And let me add music. On the world's most cited material scientist, he is the recipient of prestigious honors, including the Feynman Prize and the Daniel Drucker Medal. Hopefully all correct. Okay, anyway, let's welcome our panelists. Okay, so we have until 2:45, so we have 1 hour. This is great. And so I'll ask a series of questions, which I guess all 3 will answer, short. But if we won't get to all the questions, and it doesn't matter. And and it can also be free flowing. I'm not one for formality. Okay, you can tell. So let me find. Oh, it's down here. Okay, so of course you got many issues. Okay, so the agents can obviously do great stuff. I mean, we've heard the great stuff it can do, but of course there are various ethical issues. Not to mention the fact that one day they could destroy the world. You don't know. Okay, so the first question is, when an AI agent makes a mistake, which can happen, who's responsible? Okay, so they can make decisions, take actions on their own, but something can go wrong legally, ethically, financially, scientifically, and they're still held accountable. Humans are held accountable, not the AI. The problem is that agents can act so fast that humans cannot stop them in time to prevent problems from occurring, right? And so how do we create fair responsibility rules when AIs move faster than people can supervise? Okay, so who wants to start? Go ahead.
This may be the only one I can actually contribute to. I'll take it. No, I'm going to represent the institutional perspective here. And so as an institution, we hold you as researchers responsible for the research you do, whether it's fair and it's ethical. The same thing if you're using tools to conduct that research, we're going to hold you accountable for the use of those tools. That's your decision. And so the challenge here from an institution is really about risk. So the individual actions of a faculty member could in fact put the reputation of the entire university at risk. And so we have to think of it, at least I have to think of it from that perspective. So strategically, we have to recognize how do we mitigate risk. And so when we enter into using agents, how do we train those agents? How do we orchestrate those agents in a way that we can minimize risk? And these guys can probably tell you if that's even possible.
Okay, do you want to answer?
Should I go?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, my perspective in finance. So the nice thing about finance is that we've been using AI for a while. It did not take the form of large language models, but for the best hedge funds, for the high frequency trading firms, you cannot even ask them what they're investing on. Like they just would not know. Like it's just changing so fast, determined by the algorithm. It's like, what are you holding? I have no idea. I have no idea if trading now, if it just traded a minute ago, an hour ago, a millisecond ago, like it just went outside. Normally, and I think about finance is that there's kind of like, as long as you disclaim what you're doing and you disclaim the risk, nobody's really responsible. So if I tell you, you know what, my hedge fund is going to be, I'm going to go to Las Vegas and I'm going to go bet everything on the 28 red, let's say, I don't know if it's red or black, right? And you say like, okay, then it's fine. But if I go and bet on the 35, then it's my fault, right? Like, because it's like, I'm taking more risk than I have to. So for example, if I just start a hedge and I tell you, all of our choices are going to be done by large language models, that's perfectly fine. It will fly, nothing will happen. I mean, if we lose the money, we lose the money. Like everybody was an adult and everybody knew what they were gonna get themselves into. On the research side, I would say we held the responsibility as researchers. Like nobody else is there, so we will have to do things. But at least in finance, the nice thing is we just create a limited liability entity that will hold the responsibility.
Just think about 1,000 agents working at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, for engineers and material science and engineers like this, I mean, it's like in the institutional outline. I mean, we're responsible for the actions. If I'm designing a new alloy and I'm convincing Boeing to build their planes with it, I'm going to think in about 7 months, 7 now. So yeah, I better hope it's going to be done well. So there's somebody has to sign off on this. And they're going to take responsibility at this point, right? It's not even same for, but I think it will change. I think at some point, like you said, the trading's always been done really fast. Nobody knows what they're doing. It's going to be like this in engineering as well. At some point, you're going to have agents that give. Maybe you got more worried about that than the financial markets because you're going to the airplane. But I think there's going to be some level of automation. Otherwise, the reason why I think this is because you're going to have too much bottleneck with human approvals. This is going to be the bottleneck. So there's going to be some automation. Hopefully, we can figure out that's safe.
Okay, so I'm going to take a side question here, the human-generated question. And that is, there are companies, maybe even political entities, but companies that have assigned legal status to large language models, right? And I can imagine a swarm of agents being a generalization of a large language models, right? I'm a science fiction guy, so you think about the Borg. So the collection of agents can be constituted as one entity, for instance, right? That could be hired by a company. So what happens if they give it legal status? In reference to the question of responsibility.
I mean, probably some laws have to change to finance this properly, but I would say that at least with material physics stuff, you have some design by simulations, and you have a process, the standard. You go through testing, and you say, prove the strength of this alloy, and there's a certain way of testing it. So you can't just make up your own test and sell it. You have to follow ASTM or things like this. And maybe there will be a standardization like that will be collected, tested by agents. So I think it won't be maybe the ultimate responsibility is a political legal question, but if we can automate the testing and you can prove that it satisfies all the engineering depends if it can be done better than humans, basically, because humans have, maybe it's like driving, you know, they're not as good as a machine.
If the tests are done in a sandbox, the same thing is true for finances, right? But once you got robotics, and robotics is not yet where GPT was in 2022. Okay, but we're within a couple of years. We're within 5 years of being, I think, within
These robots,
GPT. So the robots will be able to do the experiments
exactly.
in an automated fashion.
But it's
And
all-
the things can go wrong. Then.
Exactly. So when you prove an alloy to be ready for an airplane, you go through these tests done by humans. If you can automate this process, you don't have to change anything. The machine does it all. Maybe the legal status of the agents are, I'm not sure, but I suspect that at some point, I mean, it's gonna. I mean, it's a definition. I mean, even current machines are human or legal entities, right? They are. So I think this is not fundamentally going to change unless the law changes for that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but you could, I don't know why you would, but you could definitely just sort of like a legal entity, like a trust fund that is basically going to listen to every single choice that AI would do. Right, and then the legal entity is technically the fund, like not the model itself, but for all practical purposes, it would just act on behalf of whatever model or whatever set of instructions you would do. Like that's perfectly legal. I don't know why you would do it, but you could just put like whatever $100,000 and just let the model do whatever they want and hire a human and do everything like that. I don't think it's that far away from just having let's say a firm or something, just like a legal entity. And normally what you do is the legal entity is responsible as so far as its assets, right? Like you cannot really, once the firm goes bankrupt, like that, it will back. Once like the trust is also resources, it is also resources. I think a more fun thing would be what happens if I just go and deploy an agent in the wild and let it, buy GPU power using Bitcoin and then deploy it in blockchain or whatever, and then there's no legal entity responsible, and then there's no way to
You
solve it.
must have read the book by Yudlowski. Maybe.
I haven't.
The,
No.
the recent book that says if you build AGI, we all die, something like that. That's pretty much the title. Okay, he's well known for being a doomer and thinking that we're going to become extinct. It's a good book, though.
And if I can, in response to my first response, I want to also reinforce that we need to lean into technology. And so when I talk about risk, what's the acceptable level of risk? And so if we start with risk at the beginning, then we don't ever innovate. And so I want to make sure that we include that. But as we take it to this question about do we create legal entities, as again, from an institutional perspective, we need to establish contracts with that legal entity so that we have to protect the reputation of all these employees and all these students. And so we need to go into that very cautiously. Do we want to work with a legal entity? Do we choose to do so that we can absolve ourselves of any responsibility? So we need to think about the motivation for why you would choose to work with a legal entity if you have an LLM that has legal status. Are you doing that because it allows you to be a little more casual, and then you're actually creating risk, but you're saying, well, it's not risk to the university because it's on them because they're a legal entity now. So we need to be, we don't do things because it's the easiest way to do it sometimes. So we need to still be thinking about the fact that most of us represent an organization, and the organization is ultimately going to feel the harm if we do things outside the bounds.
I get the feeling that universities are going to have to construct, let's say, specialized sandboxes in which to actually perform agentic experimentation, while we get more experience, like people are buying Mac minis now, but we could actually construct specialized sandboxes from various perspectives. You have an opinion on that?
Yeah, it just seems too slow. Like that will take like whatever, a decade or something.
I'm with you. I'm with you, but I still will not use OpenClaw. Okay, and I understand you.
Is that 1970s decade or a 2020s decade? 2020s decade, maybe 5 weeks. Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask the next question. Okay, so when you have many AI agents trying to work together, that's like for Markus and you, they need to communicate and coordinate constantly. Sometimes this coordination can take so much effort that it cancels out the benefit of having multiple agents in the first place. How do we know when using multiple agents helps versus when it just creates more problems? And I would say, especially when you do dynamic rewriting of prompts, for instance, right? You can imagine that this could happen, and then you could lead to either no solutions, no conversions, no anything. That would be chaos, or worse. It could be worse.
Yeah, I think a lot of if you take these swarm systems, they cost a lot of compute, and I think there's a lot of wasted cycles in them because the agents are trying to find their way essentially until they kind of. If you take a system that's more designed like the one I think we showed in the beginning, you have software engineers and critics and experimenters and things like this. The coordination is not so much of an issue. I mean, you actually have a lot of benefit from these different roles. I think a lot of these things, if you wouldn't use these specialized rules, you would not be able to solve them at all because you have to go through multiple cycles. So if you take a single agent and it would just be running through a prompt and getting an answer, it would stop short of doing anything useful. So I think there's a lot of benefit, but there's a lot of room, I think, for finding engineering principles of how you build these intelligent systems. I think we're still early on. There's a lot of engineering involved and make them work, right? A lot of experience and different problems require slightly different prompting and setup. But I found that with better foundation models, I think you actually need less of an engineering than you would need maybe a year or two ago. A year or two ago, we needed to do a lot of figuring out how do we deal with data sharing. Now we just give them skills and give them fast skills. Actually, like Sherwin was saying this morning, that's just fact. Years ago, people were trying to figure out all the harnesses around data sharing and tools. Now it's kind of a solved problem because these foundation models are so good in figuring out how to acquire new skills.
Okay, so Alejandro, any opinion on this?
Yeah, it's a very interesting problem because it's kind of like what's the optimal organization of a firm? Like it's very similar. What's the optimal organization of an institution? Like it's not that much far away on how they usually make institutions such that the agents can communicate better. So sometimes cooperative work will be better, whereas other times like a confrontative, like you're submitting a paper and then the referee trying to find anything. So sometimes a lot of just institutional knowledge would help in the sense to say like, okay, have a good intuition of that this type of framework would work because it mostly works in a similar way with humans. The other boring answer is that this is just a function of agents to an output, and in principle you can just optimize that function. You don't need to know what's the optimal way to organize the agent. That's just like a black box to you, and you can just optimize it. Not trivial to optimize because it's very expensive to compute, blah blah blah. But we have good black box costly optimization things such as Bayesian algorithms and similar.
Although sometimes, in game theory, in games, it's already been shown that you can choose an optimization function, and sometimes the AI, the agent, can actually find solutions which are radically different than anything you would have thought of. For instance, like there was one game with a boat race where you had to go around, and basically as fast as possible, and the AI was able to come up with a solution where it never even did the race. It found some other strange solution, and it was able to win. I forget how it knocked out the competitors or something.
I remember. So the goal of the game was to achieve to the goal line, but they primed the AI to get the highest score. And it turns out if you collected rings, you would get a very high score, and there was like a small ball where the AI could just go on a loop collecting rings over and over and over, and it would never finish the race. And it would just max out the score.
Right. So you can imagine when you're doing finances or materials or science or whatever, you never know for sure whether the agent or the swarm is going to come up with some kind of really creative solutions that could create havoc, that could create problems, and have really financial consequences or consequences in the world in terms of accidents, etc. So does that concern you?
Yeah. I mean,
well, it turns out the universities are multi-agent systems, and so what we're doing is we're transferring from having multi-human agents to now having multiple computing agents. And the question is, when I'm working on solving a problem at the university, is what's the fewest number of agents I can get in a room which gives me the greatest coverage? And so, when we talk about having multi-agent solutions, what is that point? And I think Alejandro started to go there. What's the point of optimization? Do we? Markus, you had a slide that showed agents provide these 8 different roles in the process. And so I think we need to think about things from that perspective to say, what is the value add of each different agent we would want to submit into an equation? But at the end of the day, we also say, from an optimization standpoint, when is too much too much? But I also agree, too, that part of getting those different perspectives, I'm always looking for somebody with a different perspective because you can approach the problem a different way. Maybe it's a loop and then you're hacking the game, but but sometimes you're finding innovations that you wouldn't have found otherwise.
No, that's clear. It's always like a balance between the good and the less good or the bad, right? Okay, so next question. Okay, so can the AI agent turn against you, right? Combining the next two questions, right? You're using AI systems you cannot explain, right? We know that interpretable AI is a really big research area these days. So the AI agent is like a digital employee that works for you 24/7. At the moment, 15 hours, right? So what happens if it gets tricked, hacked, or misunderstands its instructions? It could delete important files, leak confidential information, or make unauthorized purchases, all before anyone notices. Should we treat AI agents as potential security threats, just like we would a suspicious employee, or do we need completely new security approaches?
Yeah, I would say, coming back to the previous thing, you have to be careful with what you wish for because you may get it. So, you really need to specify what you want to achieve from the agent. But this is not that much different from humans, right? Like, it's not like you would trust just any human to do anything, right? Like, there's rules, restrictions in place, and procedures, right? Like, if you see somebody taking 10,000 laptops out of the university, you will be like, okay, what's going on, right? Like, so you can have like some type of monitoring system with agents, and I think that would go a long way. So like the same way that you shouldn't just trust a human to do the right thing, you should not trust an AI agent. Not because of the same reason, but just the AI agent will just randomly sometimes hallucinate an objective and then go behind that objective, and you may or may not have realized that. But if you have good monitoring systems, good observability of what are the actions, of what's the reasoning behind the actions, etc., you may be able to catch some stuff earlier later than later.
Keeping in mind that if you have 1,000 agents, right, you're never going to take the time to read the logs and the observations that are generated. You clearly can have other agents reading this stuff. I mean, that's obvious. Okay, and so this, this makes me think of Jurassic Park. Okay, so Jurassic Park, I think at the end of the first one, it was like, there were only females, I think, only males, and yet they were able to have children, right? So, if there's a way, nature will find it. So it's a little bit like AI. Every one of these models is like some really fancy interpretation machine. If you think about it, right? And so there's no way you can actually capture all the edge cases. There will always be ways. It's going to always do something that you had never considered, right? And so it's tricky to say that.
What will happen? There will be a problem,
right? And so does it happen before or after you do something useful?
And let me rip off of that. So we have AI that basically tells us something. We say, is that really true? And then it lies to us. And so there's no real conscience there. But we also have employees who say, did you steal that $10,000? Did you steal that $10,000? Absolutely not. And so we had to think about it. What's interesting to me though right now is that everybody in this room and all the people on the cutting edge are aware of the liabilities. They're conscious, and they're consciously thinking about what can I do to keep this from spinning off the rails. Now we start moving into NLP interfaces. We get some 12-year-old who knows nothing can now create their own AI agents without having any idea about what the ramifications are. Now we really are stepping into a scary domain because they don't care about risk. They're not worried about it. Everybody in this room knows about risk. Everybody here is going to try to design ways to mitigate that risk. And we're going to step into, we're there now, but we're in a position right now where we have people who are complete noobs, can go in with the natural language processing and generate an AI agent and put no controls at all around it. So I think that's a real challenge we have.
Right, exactly. So this leads to the next question about when AI mistakes multiply across a system. I mean, right now, each one of you is using your own system of agents that you developed yourself to do what you have. But it's only a matter of time in the very near future where Alejandro's agent swarm will talk to Markus's agent swarm for whatever the reason, either because you planned it or because you did not plan it. And when that happens and the agents were constructed so differently, okay, the chances of anything going wrong increases. And that can propagate. So what do you say about that?
Well, I can say that we already built a system. We didn't talk about it here, but
now you tell us. Okay.
So a system that actually allows scientists to contribute agents to solve problems as outsourcing. And so the idea is exactly this, that I have my own agents that are really specialized in the stuff I'm doing in my lab, but I want your agents, which are maybe in a different domain, to be casually looking around and maybe they're needed for something. So we already have the system built. And we're not scaling it yet because we want to limit it to a number of users, but yeah, it can be fundamentally scaled. And in fact, the agents can decide. Principally, the agents that are doing this right now could in principle make their own system. They can just code their own app and purchase a web server and basically create a copy of themselves. Just the entire system is on GitHub anyway. Right? So that could happen, and it will happen. Totally agree. But it's also as a great opportunity. I'm more of an optimist, but I guess I see that as but it's really exciting actually, especially if this happens, because now you're getting these, incredible skills that are maybe human side. That's a lab equipment that is in certain labs. Maybe here you have a manual lab. Maybe this could automatically connect with scientists in Siberia who wants to do this experiment. And so suddenly you get all these connections which are not possible before. And I think it's an incredible opportunity, but also really risky, of course, what these agents are going to do to them.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, at what point does reward, it's a reward risk balance. And what does one do to even balance that?
Yeah, but with agents, we have something that we did not get with people. You can just test them in virtual environments, and because they do not know if the virtual environment is real or not, they will just behave the same way. Like that's a very nice thing. You can just, if you're scared that whatever, the financial LLM agents will lead to a crash in the stock market, you can just, deploy them in a simulated stock market and see what actually happens. It does. But, it's much easier. Like, you cannot really do this with employees. You can just do this with LLMs. And, so far, every LLM is kind of like an identical copy of itself. So you just do enough simulations and use other LLMs to, sanitize the output and etc. You can just do very reasonable testing of whether something will go really weird.
Well, think about it this way, right? Let's assume you have only one chance in 1,000 of having something really bad happen. That's a low probability. But if you have 1 million people using agents, 1 out of 1,000 gives you 1,000 accidents, right? And so the things can get really bad, even if the probability of an accident is very low.
But I can just run 1 million simulations or 10 million simulations before to see if that would happen and whether that would have any. Like that's the nice thing about AI is you just have computing power, just can scale up what would happen when people start deploying them. With some caveats that people are more creative than the models themselves, but
Yes, what you're saying is you can create forensic agents, and so if you want to assure that, well, first off, we've had black box type thinking all over. Coming out statistics, cluster analysis. Do you really know, what were how the factors loaded exactly? So there is always an element of unknown. We're certainly accelerating that quite dramatically, but when we talk about that 1 in 1,000. Where the case may be, can we now create agents that are basically doing a forensic audit to identify where the thinking is either illegal, illogical, or whatever? I don't know if that's possible, but it seems to me that that's something we should be working on baking into the process.
My guess is the answer is possible.
Yeah, it's already it's very possible and very easy to do. Like in fact, if you're worried about the catastrophic risk, you would just deploy like 1 million agents thinking about all of the possible things that can go wrong. And then, you collect those, and then maybe you take some of the scenarios seriously, maybe you don't. And if you think it's like more like 1 million agents.
There's the weak link. It's like people used to say that the blockchain was super safe. You can invest in crypto and there's no risk. But the risk occurs at the boundaries between, at the point at which you get onto the blockchain and the point at which you get off the blockchain. Once you're on the blockchain, things are safe. But getting onto the blockchain and getting off the blockchain, apparently it's got security risk, and that's how a lot of these thefts occur. So when you say, yes, you can have the agents create lists of what's risky and what's not risky, and then somebody has to decide, that's the boundary. Sure. Okay, so I'm just saying.
My agent might bribe your forensic. Bitcoin. It's interesting. I think you can build this, but it seems like a lot of us are saying we have to have some sort of sandboxing and gamification and maybe even a hard boundary, a physical AI gap. Maybe I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but maybe that's.
Agents are out, right? You got OpenClaw, and then you got MicroClaw, you got NanoClaw, you got a whole bunch of them already. out there and free, and you guys said if you use the foundation models, of course you get more reliable results. I understand that. But of course you can also use open source models, or
they're powerful.
OSS, whatever, and those are not as good as the foundation models, so the risks increase. So do you have any ideas on what one does? I mean, this goes beyond your own areas. Do you have any ideas on how one actually deals with those kind of problems? I mean, the future is here, right? This future is actually happening, right? There's going to be an explosion. Right now, we're in the early stages of open cloud. It's growing very fast, right? And so there's going to be an explosion of use of agents by all kinds of people, let's say people with good intentions where things can go bad, and then you've got the people with bad intentions where things can go worse. So do you have any feelings, anything to say about that?
Could you imagine an agent that could actually enroll in your class, go ahead and sign into Canvas for you, do all your assignments? Oh, wait, never mind. That's what I'm signing. That already exists. And so, we, as an illustration for the non-material science and finance realm, but no, we're at that point now where we're having real impact. And for us, I think the question is, to what extent does it affect us as educators?
You go back to the solution I presented to my chair 2 years ago, oral exams. Everybody goes through oral exams. It is absolutely impossible to cheat, and I'm advocating oral exams given by AI agents. Okay, that's been done by at least one person. Okay, so otherwise, how do you scale? You have to scale, right? And you can't get past that.
We can just increase the university size, given that there will be so much free resources, so we can just allocate it to universities and hire more professors and having like a smaller classes.
I have a question. When are we going to see the first agent with tenure, or maybe the first? I was saying earlier during lunch, I'm going to maybe create an avatar of myself and make a fake because I have these social media personalities.
I haven't heard that one before.
I don't know if it would be done, but and I think if you have a fake professor, you have a fake student gets a degree, when are we going to see that? What's the prediction? Can I ask a question? What do you think is going to happen? We're going to have a non-public, non-disclosed student, faculty, whatnot, and they go through a whole system, basically act like humans, pass the academic Turing test.
The student will come to an oral exam, which is going to be given by a collection of a swarm of agents,
right.
And it's going to have to present 3 or 4 biometrics, right? I mean, eye scan, finger scan, or whatever. So as a consequence, that will prevent an AI from taking the place of the student.
We're going to hire a human.
Well, there will be one human supervising, let's say, 100 students. They have one human supervising 100 exams given at once.
They will incentivize them to have some human give their eyes and retina scanning.
That's going to happen. But I think you bought yourself a couple of months for you to think of a solution. You're right. You're right.
Yeah, no, I mean, exam fraud happens already, right? Like, you can just hire another human to go to the class for you, and then if he looks like you, without detecting them, I guess.
No, there's no perfect solution, right? All the time, any solution is going to be like 6 months, 1 year.
For the AI, I think the only long-term solution is just we just come up with monitoring systems where the AI itself is monitored. That's it. I don't see anything else that's good.
And then it becomes tricky to avoid going into a dystopian system. Right, dystopian where, everything is guarded, you got security guard, etc. This becomes very much like
you can decentralize it, right? You can have different LLM systems in charge of different parts of the economy. At this point, it's very dystopian,
but I think for our faculty, we need to think about what are we doing with our curriculum, and then what are we doing about assessment. And so, for those of you who are not aware, we have the coffee chats every Wednesday for an hour and a half, 8:30 over the Innovation Hub. And so people are banging around those ideas. We have, people in education who are experts in curriculum. We need to be thinking about things in those ways to say, are there ways that we can actually promote learning that embraces AI as well, by not learning that shuns AI, but learning that embraces AI, but also learning that can be assessed in a way that's meaningful is a challenge.
Okay, so 2 more questions, and then we can open this up to the audience. Okay, we're going to finish up at let's say 2:45. So so who really controls AI? So AI agents are everywhere, so that's understood. but most of the best AI models come from a handful of big tech companies, just a few, right, in the US and China. Are we building a future where AI agents are everywhere, but only a few companies control the underlying technology? And what problems can that create?
Yes, it's true.
Yes.
And actually, I want to say,
Moving on.
this is
Okay.
a problem actually, in a sense, for being in a university. We see, that innovation needs to happen. Actually, I'm a lot more, we're having limitations. I see a lot more limitations in LLMs than others. Panel perhaps, I don't know, but so I think we have to innovate in the architecture, in the training, and the innovation in AI itself before we get to some of those issues we talked about. I think there's so many failure points at this point. And the question to me is not so much who owns that. How do we make sure the innovation happens? Because in a corporation that's betting billions and billions of dollars on a certain technology, innovation becomes sometimes close to impossible, because the entire company will focus on technology. It's proven. And that's actually the bigger worry, actually, is the leadership in the future. How are we going to get this next generation of AI systems if it's all sitting there? It's not happening in universities, it's not happening in more experimental labs. And it's actually cut out of this completely because of resources. Even at a place like MIT, we don't nearly have. We have actually, I think Stanford and MIT has like one of the lowest ratios of GPUs per faculty or students. There's no way we can compete with any of these, even if we wanted to. I think that's actually the bigger concern is not so much today, but just where the next wave of innovations are going to come from. And it might not happen, actually, if it's sitting in just in corporations.
What do you? Go ahead.
I'm slightly less pessimistic because at least so far there's a lot of competition within the models, and we've also been, thankfully for whatever reason, a lot of open source models that can kind of like keep the battle alive. And then there's also the other factor that sometimes you do not want the biggest model because it will be too expensive to run, either in time or in money. So sometimes a smaller model will do the job. So I'm not sure we're converging to the world where it's like only one specific model, but like even within OpenAI, if you try to go to the API, they have like 10 different versions of ChatGPT 5.3. Like one is like I, one is like Codex, one is etc. Because different models will be useful for different things. So there may be some space for both competition, keeping the labs up to like discipline and generating new stuff, the open source part, and also the fact that at this point, even the smallest models are very, very, very good for most of the tasks.
Right. So I see a future, let's say in 3 to 5 years, where you have your agents. Right now, your agents of a few large models with different prompts. But I can see a future where you have thousands of tiny models, which is what you pretty much.
No, that's what they did actually.
That's what you're doing.
Yes, we did. I mean, but yes. There's an open question how performant these things did. But yeah, we did use small models, small questions. But I do want to say, I think in terms of innovation, and not controversy, but OpenAI actually is an example for this. The innovation with GPT, or ChatGPT, and all this actually came from OpenAI, which at the time was a crazy small startup founded by some billionaire that doesn't want to have a combination with Google. Google invented this technology and they didn't commercialize it at all because they were doing other things. So okay, because we can assume that maybe that's the end of all technology development, but it might not be actually. So it's important to think from an innovation perspective, university, a broader ecosystem, make sure we have enough innovation capacity to think beyond what we currently have. Because it's very dangerous to assume that what we have right now is sort of the end and not be all. I think, and I do think that there is a real concern, at least for me, that universities are in many ways completely cut out of this ecosystem. And if you go to the big conferences, universities will innovate on the edges and coming up with maybe tweaks and maybe study the models. The big innovations, the big breakthroughs are happening behind those walls. There's no publication, there's no recipe, there's no technology sharing. I think for innovation, this is potentially concerning.
Although we do have Jan LeCun, who's working on this, what's it called, this JEPA model.
He just found a new startup. He'll be working there for a while.
Right. He's created his own startup, recently, right? The point is it's still an open model, right? But at least there are versions that are open, so he's one of those guys going,
Right.
and cross is orthogonal to the big company,
Yeah.
saying big companies are going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, actually, and so on this topic, I mean, I think the LLM technology has a lot of really built-in intrinsic limitations, and actually, there's a lot of proof evidence that this is becoming an issue with the insiders, and because you've seen a range of startups being, not just Jan LeCun, but others as well, founded by previous founders, co-founders, senior VPs of research of these some of those big tech companies. I think they're not just doing it because they're bored, they're doing it because they understand something about the technology. We all understand limitations and look for new things. So it's a good sign, I think, but just as an ecosystem perspective, I think we want to make sure we have this capability in some way where the community can participate. Like in the Swarm example, I mean, you get innovation when you have a bunch of different people thinking about it differently and critiquing it. If all the innovation, imagine if all the innovation happens only by showing the results, but not showing the actual process to get there. This is advances. I mean, it's fine for now, but I'm just looking at this more from a training perspective. And there's probably a truth already. Students graduating from universities are not prepared to work in these. They have to learn all the trades in the companies. Right? So universities are not really training them in math and in basic, physics and basic algebra and things like this. But we're not training them in the actual cutting edge technology, which is a lot of engineering and how these models are. It's the same technology with different flavors, but the technology really is in the engineering and how process training, what exactly recipe you use.
No, you need to develop intuition.
Straight, exactly, yeah. It's become much like vocational. And that's why this kind of vocation of being an AI engineer is one of those highly paid jobs today. You don't learn it at MIT anymore.
I also think universities could, in principle, just get together and pitch money to train a model. Like I don't think the amounts are extraordinary. So like a 70 billion parameter model you can train with, let's say, $100,000 to reduce the G rates at UF. And if you want to like really something state of the art, it would cost like whatever, $5 million or something like that. You could really get up to that point, but there's still incentive to do so. But you could, like, it's a large amount of money, like $5 million, but it's also within the budget of like whatever the best 100 universities is not that large. It's just there's not really a good framework or reason to just pull together resources.
Happens to have sufficient resources to do it. Very few universities do.
Yeah, but the universities can rent resources from UF. Like it's not like there's collaboration. Like I'm sure it's like here.
Well, and back to the original question, I can't imagine a time when say Anthropic is getting in a fight with the U.S. Oh wait, no, too soon. So the original question was, all the power of the LLMs is in just a small number of companies, and so I think it's really incumbent upon the universities to work. First off, the agentic models are smaller, and so we can potentially put a lot of those. We put the knowledge inside a walled garden that is managed by the university, and doesn't require the large general LLMs to do that. So we need to think about that, but then also the collaboration with other institutions, because I think that the only defense we have is everything goes south with the major corporations. The universities are going to have to step in to create the framework for any future model.
Okay, so let's it's 2:24. Okay, no, fine. Anyway, so do I have one more question? Here, let's see. Yeah, so here's a question. How do you make sure that the agents do what you want? I mean, it seems to me that the more complicated your agentic system, the more agents you have, the more working together. And I would argue the more heterogeneous they are, then the higher the likelihood of something messing up. So do you guys think about these things? You have solutions?
I can start with mine. I mean, so first, you normally have an objective function, and like that objective function can be like going optimize an investment strategy, in which case you have like a hard number that you can just point a function and try to optimize. Or you may have like another more subjective thing, like coming up with a better economic model that will explain the impact of AI, right? In which case you would use LLM as the judge. But I think once you specify your objection function and your scoring function, then it's like, things cannot really go that much out of hand within a system that's trying to optimize. That's not exactly the thing that is like, operating in the real world, because in the real world, like reality is too complex to model. But at least if your plan is only whatever, give me the best investment strategy. If you have like enough objectives and the objectives are well defined and they're verifiable and everything, you can just come up with a pretty good system.
Based on that logic, I should be able to use OpenClaw, and say I want to optimize my schedule, and I should not worry about it taking my passwords or finding my API keys. And yet, it's already been reported that there have been security issues. So I'm not sure I buy your argument.
Well, I mean, I can say in science applications, actually, there are two things. One is some problems don't actually have an answer. So even if you have a question,
yes.
So, some things are really complicated. So you have to build in some sort of guardrail on you're going to go in circles, because there's no answer. Maybe you don't have the tools to answer. There's a lot of failure points for sure in intelligence. There are definitely a lot, and the more harness you put around them, the more the more difficult things become, and the easier open. But what we have done, I mean, actually, the swarm systems and related things, a lot of these are coded by agents themselves.
Which makes the potential problems even more potentially.
But with supervision of humans. So it's not, and this is something people say about coding. I mean, bad coding, it might work for making an app that somebody else has already made in some sort of version of it. But yeah, if you're creating a complex piece of software, you need a lot of human supervision.
Yeah, because for instance, at Anthropic, is it NVIDIA? 25% of the circuits in NVIDIA are coded by AI. So the question I'm asking, just for the purpose of this panel, is how do we know that the AI did not include backdoors which allow other people to kind of, infiltrate and mess up the circuits? Okay, look, I'm not telling you I know how. I'm just saying, isn't it possible that the AI, in its complicated circuits, when you got billions of transitions, if not trillions of transistors, can actually create backdoors which will allow hackers to do X, Y, Z?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is like there's no provable way, I guess, but you can always just try to red team it with a billion agents, or like just put a billion agents trying to hack your system, and a billion agents cannot do it, and you can assume it's safe towards that billion agents. Will it be representative of anything that can happen in the world? No. Is there anything else that you can do? Probably no.
Correct, and you hope that the companies are actually doing some version of that.
I mean, they are, right? They have red teaming things, like at least, yeah. But yeah, there are software bugs, like that, those things happen.
You also hear every once in a while, security person X leaving OpenAI, or security person X leaving Anthropic because they feel the company is changing their policies or not doing enough on security. So even statements like what you just said are dynamic and change in time. Right?
And then I think became a poet. That's
the next panel is on corporate integrity and personal integrity, right?
No, I think we should basically ask the audience if they have any questions that they'd like to ask. Yes? Okay, over there. Yeah. Oh, that's Gary. Yeah, okay.
I got one quick one, so you can just repeat it. So we're asked to project out to the future. My question is got two parts to it. How far out in the future are you comfortable projecting out? And part two, what aspect makes you less comfortable after that?
Right. Okay. So how far into the future are you comfortable projecting out? And what aspects prevent you from projecting out further into the future?
I guess 3 months, maybe.
Next Thursday. I was stuck on next Thursday.
I mean, and the reason is it's a non-linear, accumulation of capabilities. Really, I mean, I can say in 3 months or in 6 months, I have an idea of what's going on. But if I look back, 2 years, 3 years, or something, I would have been surprised if I would have been in the talk, my own talk today. I would have said, "This is crazy. This is totally not possible. You set protein with a bunch of off-the-shelf models, do a better job than $1 billion foundation model at a lab, the Nobel Prize winning lab created. I mean, it's insane." And so it's really hard to predict really the future. I think there's an accumulation of capabilities, and this nonlinear interaction actually is the thing that makes it really hard because every agent becomes a little bit better, right? And I remember actually Sam Altman talked about this in one of the panels he was on. He said, yeah, models are going to become just a little bit better, and all of the stuff we're doing becomes significantly better. It's just lifting up, the literature extraction becomes better, and now you're getting better software writing, and that's what's really hard. I mean, it's an exponential growth. But I think what people are missing on top of that, and I think this is what the data shows, is it's actually super exponential. And capabilities that are increasing beyond our recognition, ability to understand progress, and beyond this, there's this interaction. We're talking about things that are already happening. We don't have no control over them. The questions here.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think like 2 years is safe to say that nothing really will change so much, mostly because institutions are slow and because it's getting increasingly costly to train these models. Like it just takes a lot of time and a lot of energy, and there's very much decreasing return to scale. So, and I don't think reasoning is going to answer many more issues. Like I don't think you can really reason your way through a lot of actual things. And the physical models are just not that great because it takes a lot of feedback time in order to build a robot, receive the feedback in open space. So I think 2 years is probably going to be stable.
I mean,
I think that makes sense. The challenge is when the bar gets dropped, and so you have X number of people who are able to play in the sandbox right now. With the dropping the bar to include NLP to be able to have somebody that has no coding skills to all of a sudden play now moves that up an X factor. When you start having the ability for people to create their own swarms, then I think that there's an acceleration there. So I think that we're not there yet, but I think it's the 2 years might not be a bad estimate on that.
Okay, hold on. I do believe that within 3 years we'll have personalized assistant 24/7. I mean, affirmative versions of that. But you're going to say that doesn't change much,
right? You can already have that when you open cloud. It doesn't trust it a lot.
That's yeah, you're right. Okay, anyway, question.
Yeah,
John.
so talked about liability and all that stuff and how to get around it, right? At what point do you think, or what kind of indications would you need to pull the plug on all of this? Because you're just realizing that it's too dangerous, truly.
Okay, so under what conditions would you pull the plug on what you're doing? At what point does it become too dangerous?
Not just the one little project. I mean, like the whole thing.
AI
Yeah.
on Earth. Okay,
The whole thing.
yeah, okay.
It's not going to stop. Like just going to keep happening. There's no plug in the plug. It's fully decentralized.
They can actually unplug the Whopper 5000, but there are too many plugs here, so it's not.
I mean, I think most people probably, most of the stuff would be if it affects your electricity. So if your power goes out and it's not a storm or not a hurricane, not a snow, a blizzard in Boston the other day, we lost power. I know why. But if power goes out and you don't know why, and it's it was agents that actually messed up. Figuring out how nuclear power is so regulated in my town, I would get. I think people probably get nervous with healthcare issues. I think some of those things you mentioned earlier, agents designing things, materials, is awesome, but then suddenly you get an accident. I think this is probably what it would take for the population as a whole. I agree with you that it probably wouldn't be stopped, but I think this would at least get some real discussion over it. Otherwise, people just don't care.
It would have to affect everybody on Earth. I mean, if it affected, let's assume it affected all houses in New York City. Let's assume there were 10 million dead in New York City. I mean, you think, right? Is China going to stop? No. I mean, it's going to affect everybody if it's going to stop.
No,
that discussion occurred 3 years ago.
But at least then there would be discussion. Okay, let's.
Most likely happen probably. It would be an external factor, power supply.
Yeah.
That would cause effectively the system brownout, but it wouldn't be gone completely.
I would say epsilon before achieving ASI, artificial superintelligence, epsilon. And of course, the minute you realize that it's too late, you can't do it anymore. Right? So I believe slightly before the time, somewhere between AGI and artificial superintelligence, people would be willing to pull the plug, but by that time it's too late. It's a little bit like anytime you see, you know, like if you feel you want to change any kind of policy or you want to do something by climate, by the time you're really willing to do something about it, it's too late. You should have started long before the effects were obvious. Same thing with AI.
I think climate is a perfect example. Like, people always say like, yeah, we should stop climate change, but then you ask them how much would you be willing to pay $100 more per month to stop it? Like, no. So, I don't know. How much would you be willing to stop AI? I'm sure like the vast majority of people would not be willing to spend more than $1 to stop the forest.
Yes, and what's the threshold of what they're willing to pay that half the population of Earth would be willing to accept? You know what I'm saying? Okay, any other questions? Go ahead, Joanne.
Well, related to this, right, when the federal government provides flood insurance, do you think the federal government should provide insurance to AI model?
Should
To provide an insurance policy for this AI.
So the federal government provides flood insurance is the question. Should the federal government provide AI insurance?
I don't think it's feasible. Like the first thing that can go bad is too broad. Like, other than leaving you to use the emergency room if you need to, like I don't think there's an insurance that you could use.
Students might get some business ideas, AI insurance. What? How would you do it? How would you do it? You're the risk expert.
And what's the cost?
I have no idea. Well, first off, the federal government doesn't have the money to do it. In fact, the technology companies probably have more money than the federal government, or has as much money as the federal government has debt right now. So I'm not sure you're going to have any support for doing it.
Will there be a private offering? Not the government, probably is not possible, but private offering. You can buy AI insurance, so you have an open class system, and you insure yourself that, or that it's like home insurance or whatnot, or
what I'll do is I'll ask the virtual actuarial scientists. The actual actuarial scientists will be out of the job because of AI, so we'll ask them to do the tables on the cost model.
Paul?
No, not a question, but a comment is that might be the guardrail, right? So if you have insurance companies that can come in and offer policies, they will set guardrails that you will follow so that you will keep your coverage, right? That could be the forcing function for ethical behavior.
Yeah. Of course, we're concerned about, okay, you got two issues, right? You got the ethical people who think ethically, where things can sometimes go wrong. And for them, the insurance might be useful, okay? And then you got the people who want to work unethically. And you've also got the whole unethical part of the population who also have access to Asian technology. What could go wrong with that?
And the agents themselves could be unethical. They could be agents to build themselves, and they could sort of find out.
The comment was,
That's another day.
the comment was, do we have anybody online still? The comment was if insurance companies are insuring against us, that maybe they provide the guardrails. And so then, Gordon, to your point, you have ethical, but then you have profit motives. And the good thing is insurance companies don't have profit motives.
No, I'm just saying,
They're going to be doing the ethical.
you got people in the population who want to, like the people who are doing ransomware.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Who knows what these guys can do with they got their own agents, right? I mean, based on open source or not, and so the sky's the limit as far as this crowd is concerned. Right? Who knows what kind of schemes they're going to come up with.
Because you have moral hazard, like if you get insured, you're gonna try more risky stuff because if it fails, whatever, the insurance company. But if I were to insure you completely against any damage against open flow,
Expensive.
you would install it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I would just tell you for free, whatever happens, I'll cover your losses. You would just install it.
Well, Mustafa Suleiman in his manifesto, the back half of the book, was talking about governance and can we get governments to do governance, kind of worldwide. It had to be worldwide, and I'm not sure you get everybody to play. I don't think anybody's got enough authority to do that.
Paul,
I was just going to say, Lloyd's of London is already offering this, so if you want to buy it, you can. So insurance against financial losses caused by malfunctioning AI chatbots. So for example, Air Canada had a chatbot offer a discounted air price to someone that they had to honor even though they didn't want to, so they could buy insurance against that. It's crazy.
Interesting. Okay, question.
I was just gonna make responding. You said that if you could insure all the losses, then that would make someone do more risky things. But how do you like, other than financial loss, how do you ensure that you're protecting privacy? How do you, are you trying to ensure information that's actually unrecoverable, like, once you lose it? Is that the game that we're playing?
It's not much different than health insurance, right? Like you may have some really precious memory in your house that you value a lot, and then the insurance company will tell you like, okay, if your house burns down, how much do you want? You want $1 million? You want 10 million? And based on that, they're gonna price stuff. So I think at the end of the day, it's going through a number, at least for them.
But to your point, AI in medicine is a different kind of loss, but that loss could be human life.
But again, the insurance company would say, like, how much will insure a human life?
Is life insurance going to cover it?
Right.
They'll find a way not to cover it.
So there's going to be a revival of the insurance industry. There's going to be a whole number of specialized areas, PhD research papers, all related to insurance, right? So so for instance, people have talked about, let's say, new types of jobs and opportunities being created by AI to compensate for the job losses that people anticipate. That's one example that I had not thought about. Okay, and there's probably many other examples that we haven't thought about. Okay, so it's in 241. Any other question? Yes.
Dr. Buehler noted that because of how quickly AI is advancing, this can really lead to a gap between what we find in our research and what's currently has been developed in regards to AI, such as some of our findings being obsolete. So I wonder if there's any input or insights you have in trying to reconcile how quickly we are keeping up with AI in terms of the research.
In other words, you're asking, are there any criteria, anything to say relating? Okay, summarize what you just said.
I can try to rephrase. So basically, what we do with the research cycle is way too long, and then by the time we publish, our findings are already obsolete. We just suck it up. Like, we just try to publish anywhere, and that's why I did.
That's why you have panels, because the panel discussion can get out faster than the paper.
I mean, we were actually talking about this with lunch too. It definitely changed my life as a scientist significantly because, I need to, if I want anyone to read it and be useful for the world, I have to put it on archives. That is what we do. We put it in journals, and we put it on the internet. So then, it's right about scientists, AIs, they're going to use this or not, and it's going to be judged much more quickly. I think the traditional model of both communications and also funding is not keeping up with that. If you're getting even years ago, if you get an NIH grant or NSF grant, it was years to get it. By the time you get it, usually you've done the work already and you do research. That was sort of the thing how people did it, right? But now it's so accelerated that if you really can't almost rely on these kind of sources. So you have to get some funding agencies like DARPA are naturally faster. They much quicker turnaround and funding things and giving you the money and you can do things quickly. But yeah, some funding agencies. So it's not just the publication, it's also the way research is done. Like if you're a student, I don't know if you're a grad student or faculty, So you make a plan. I have students in my own lab that made a plan 3 years ago and they had to fundamentally change it. And in fact, multiple times what they did was obsolete before they even had the paper finished. So it's very stressful, and actually for a PhD student and faculty, especially if you're a junior faculty, how do you find your place in this world? I think it's really difficult. But I think, I think this is actually, this is an unresolved problem actually for the community because our value system, our evaluating scientific progress is the timescales are so slow, the mechanisms are so slow, and the machines are just getting so good that they're far faster than a lot of the human clock times. Yeah.
But I would definitely say that PhD students should make use of as many tools as they can, not to take shortcuts like what people might do with Einstein, but to actually improve your knowledge at a faster rate, and do more per unit time. You have incredible opportunity right now if you use the tools correctly.
Yeah, you have to learn how to use. First, you have to learn tools, and also, you can do things. So we had a discussion on this a few years ago, I think 22, we did this first agent paper. We had a discussion meeting, and we said, my student picked it up right away. I said, this is going to change what I need to do. And I said, yeah, you're going to be expected to have your own agents help you with your work. The PhD is going to look much more sophisticated, probably. So you have to learn, how to use these agents, build them. And I think there's going to be a time when, if you're not using these tools, you look you look really bad in your defense because you might not pass it. Because
We're not quite there yet, but we're almost there.
Yeah, exactly. It's getting there. And so I imagine actually things like you got to learn fundamentals. Obviously, math, physics, biology, the main knowledge is still really hard. The tacit knowledge of how humans like experiments and how they make decisions. Meetings like these where we talk, those are things that are not yet in the data set. They're really not in the models yet. So there's a lot of stuff like this. I tell myself you should go to more meetings, spend your time in go to workshops and meetings and talk to people and you learn things from people. That's probably something you can do because your agents are writing a code now. You don't have to write the code yourself. And it's real. I think it requires a transition. And many universities are not engaging in this conversation. It's moving so quickly. Universities are probably right. I mean, the slowest decision makers in the world. Probably.
You're right.
Well, we call the speed of higher ed.
I mean, I tell the dean, you can't make decisions based on what the AI is today. You got to make decisions based on what you think it's going to be in 3 to 5 years. Otherwise, you're a year out of date by the time you make the decision.
The other practical advice is you can try to work in areas where AI can help you a lot in speeding up the process. So some type of research just takes a lot of time because you need to wait for physical things to happen that will take 6 months, or you need to wait for the grant, or you need to wait for the data, etc. That will take a long time. But there are other types of research areas where you can just iterate very quickly because you can get immediate feedback, either because it's like a mathematical proof, or because you can, expand an LLM as a judge of your work, etc. So you can just focus on that. You can get papers that before it will take you like whatever 3 months, like 5 years ago, it should take you now like 5 days.
Okay, so it's 2:47, so I think we can close the panel session. I think this was a thank you for great discussion. Okay, and let me just say, so we're gonna continue with the afternoon session, and Shu and Yu right there in front of us, so we'll be taking over. And he is a professor in the computer science department, so he's been involved with AI for many years. I started 10 years ago, but he was involved for much longer than that. And so he's involved with many of the, let's say, endeavors at FSU involving AI. I see his name crop up everywhere, even quantum computing. Okay, and so anyway, he's actually mentored a lot of researchers, and people become researchers in the field of AI. So he will take over. Thank you, Shuwen.
Thank you so much.
We have a break first, or we're to reset and wait till that break.
Yeah, 3 o'clock is when it officially. 3 o'clock is when it officially starts.
All right, sorry to get break.
Thank you very much.
So welcome.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Let's be in touch. Yeah. Great, yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for.
So thank you very much. I have to head off to the airport now.
Well, have a good trip back.
Yeah,
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, this panel was very interesting. Yeah.
I found your last 2 papers, which is what you talked about. Okay, so I'm going to check those out.
Cool.
Well, the AI is going to check it out and summarize. Okay, so
I'm also gonna drive.
Thanks so much.
sounds good. Anyway,
Thank you so much. It was very interesting discussion.
good luck with everything. I'm going to check out some of those GitHubs. So GitHub, you said. Anyway, the rule of just remember the following. Okay, if 200, if you have 100 AI trading along with 100 humans, maybe all the AIs will do better. If you have 200 AIs trading against themselves,
Nathan is alive. He will join.
Okay. Hi, Nathan. You hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
He's here.
No, that's just his picture.
That's what?
That's the slideshow of his.
Oh,
headshot.
oh, that's the slideshow. Okay, I thought this is the, okay,
We probably take about 10 minutes and then we'll join back in a few.
okay.
And so when we, I'll probably give you one of these mics.
We just wanted to do
Do you have a microphone up there? Okay. Yeah, you can use that one and then give it, it's hold down till it's green and that's ready. And then hold it down to turn off. And then, since Nathan is talking, you can just mute it or turn off.
Okay, okay.
Let me see if there's anything else we're waiting for here. Other than that, I've got everyone else's talk saved. I've got Gary's, I've got Zihi's. So
Okay.
other than Nathan, we're all set to go for everyone
Okay,
else's.
I think Nathan can share his screen.
Yes, yeah, we'll switch it. We'll turn off this screen share when he's ready and
Okay,
we'll be good to go.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You can just leave the microphone there and yep. That's all.
Thank you. No.
They were trying to touch the screen.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah.
Like it's
And the biggest problem is we're giving so many productivity aids. The bottom line is. If you take the top 10% of the most capable producers and you make them 10 times as productive, the economy is going to explode, even if the other 90%.
Yeah, we need to support it.
Well, so we have to decide, how do you do that? How do you do that? So on the plus side, I think we'll have many more resources. I'm not sure what we do with an economy that's running 10x of what it's doing right now.
Competitive. I mean, I don't know whether we can make it up. Yes, oil.
No, because you're going to have a lot more workers. All of Elon's robots are going to be working 24/7. So your ability to you're
don't even want to take their math class and understand.
so from the point of view of the overall economy, because if as long as they don't kill the energy, they're
No, but the question, I don't know how much they're gonna cost. They may cost $100 an hour. They may even more than that.
what the 90%.
Yeah.
The 10% they can cost money. They're going to be the product.
Yeah, I mean, the raw makes it more expensive.
No, yeah, but how much money?
Yeah.
But in terms of how much it costs to produce them, maybe. Yeah, I mean, my starting slide for my talk was the SpaceX version. All solar on satellites around the Earth. So that takes nothing out of the grid.
And I might have to leave.
There's production costs.
I have to go.
There are.
USGS decided to do a program at 4:30. Really?
That's probably the time everybody's available. You know, other things to do.
And I was still. Yeah. What are your feelings on embedded? So I'm going to be a PhD in geology, and I think there's a data gap in Washington, which I'm trying to use learning.
So I say embedding space is the most unrecognized part of the large.